How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Joshua Monda. He is from Vancouver, Washington, on the West Coast, and he is a part of the On Your Left pro racing team. He is a 41, possibly actually even 42-year-old rookie professional triathlete. Has an amazing story about he overcame some amazing setbacks just from addictions that he struggled with in the narcotics world and growing up and having a kind of a tough time. But he was really awesome to come on and share some of his story and give some insight for the things he's learned and the places that he's going. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Mr. Joshua Monda. So where are you at right now?
I am in my office at my house in Vancouver, Washington.
Vancouver. Are you from Vancouver originally? Is that where you've kind of grown up?
I was born in Vancouver, Washington, and I should be clear, this is Vancouver, not BC,
Okay.
Washington, not DC. So we're just outside of Portland, Oregon, about 5 hours south of Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
And was born in Vancouver here, moved pretty quickly when I was a couple months old to Denver, Colorado,
Okay.
and then lived there until I was 4, and then we moved back to Portland, and I grew up in Portland most of my life until my early 20s.
Yeah. Nice, man. Yeah, it's a pretty area out there. I've been trying to find my way west for quite a while. We'll see what ends up happening because my wife's graduating in May with nurse practitioner, and we're trying to make a move. Like, well, if this is the time, or if there is a time to move west, it's probably going to be now. So we're kind of dabbling and looking around, and we'll see what ends up happening. But beautiful area. I was actually just came through Vancouver a couple of weeks ago. Ended up going into BC for a retreat in Fraser Valley. If you've ever been in that area.
I don't think I've been to Fraser Valley, no. That's close to Vancouver, BC?
About 2 hours. So, you can go either kind of west and up to Whistler, or you can kind of go a little further east and then up the other side around the mountain chain. And it's settled right in that valley where the big mountains start, and it's just so pretty. But much different than Tennessee, yeah.
How was the weather this time of year?
It was actually terrible. So usually it's not that bad. It was just like rain. I went 2 days early to go snowboarding with my buddy, and we got up there, and it was like on the mountain, 40 degrees. It rained the first day. We had to get above about 5,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 meters before it even turned to any semblance of snow. Yeah, it was pretty tough. Tough year for Canada. Everywhere else in the U.S. seems to be doing pretty good with snow, but Canada's had a tough go about it this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll kind of jump right into it. But the first question I just wanted to ask you is, who is Joshua?
Yeah, who is Joshua? Joshua is a husband, a father of 2 boys, 9 and 11.
Okay.
Very competitive, very driven, goal-oriented. Small business owner.
Okay.
Competed in triathlon since 2006. Josh is also a recovering addict with over 4 years clean and sober now, which is a big reason why he's been able to find some success in his late 30s and early 40s in this sport.
Yeah.
And this will be his first full year of racing as a professional triathlete at 42 years old.
That's really amazing. Do you know on the professional and in your age, because I don't want to say that, I mean, you're much faster than many people, definitely faster than me. And at 42, which is amazing, do you know what the oldest, the oldest professional triathlon or triathlete is? Do you know what that age is?
Well, I know up until last year, I think it was Cam Brown.
Okay.
And I believe he might be 52. Maybe
wow,
even,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and he raced, I believe his last professional Ironman was Ironman New Zealand of last year. I could be wrong on that, but it was, yeah. So I still got some time. I still got 10 years. At
Yeah,
least.
Exactly, man. It's so funny when I first got into the sport when I was like 27. I in the beginning was like, oh, it's probably too late because there's like this mentality around the late 20s is the end of it. But then I did a little digging and I was like, oh yeah, Jan Frodeno, he's in his late 30s, and I was like, I'm not even gonna peak till I'm 40, so let's make it happen. So it's really cool to see that the longevity of this sport has such a window of opportunity.
And it's a big window too,
Mm.
because when I first got into the sport, it was for Ironman racing at least.
Yeah,
It was like you peaked at Ironman racing at like 35 to 38. So that was kind of the golden age of being able to be very competitive
yeah.
and probably maybe even win Kona.
Mm.
But now you see, professional Ironman athletes, very good ones in their early 20s.
Mm.
And then you see some guys that are able to push it into their, mid to later 40s as well. So the window's gotten a lot bigger. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So going back to your childhood a little bit, I want to know, like we talked a little bit about where you're from, but do you have siblings, and what kind of a kid were you growing up?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I have a younger brother, a half brother. We share the same mom,
Okay,
and then I have a younger sister. We share the same dad, but I
okay,
didn't grow up with either of them. I was raised by my mother, single mom situation,
mm.
multiple uh, stepdads or mom's boyfriends as I was
Mm.
growing up,
Sure.
and it was a rough upbringing, to
Mm.
be honest, and very yeah, it was rough. And we didn't have a lot of money growing up,
Yeah.
and so once I got probably into my early teens, I started acting out a lot, and I
Mm.
started to get into a lot of trouble because I didn't have a lot of positive adult role models in my life, and so I tended to go and hang out with kids who were older than me and who were not very good influences on me.
Yeah.
So there was a period in my early teens where I got into a lot of trouble
Mhm.
and probably made it even harder on my mom than it already was at the
Yeah.
time.
How did you initially start making those friendships with quote unquote the wrong crowd?
It just kind of happens naturally. It was just part of the neighborhood that I grew up in.
Okay.
I grew up in a kind of a poor, rougher part of Portland and North Portland, St. John's area back in the late 80s, early 90s. And there was just a lot of, kids just running wild. And,
Yeah.
the older kids tended to use the younger kids to get them to do things that they wanted to do or things that they didn't want to do,
Oh
and
boy.
they had
Yeah.
us go and do it. So
Yeah. I definitely can relate to that a little bit. Probably not to the same intensity, but I was the oldest sibling and two younger sisters, and whenever I was afraid to do something or wanted them to do something, I could convince them relatively easily to do it. So
yeah, yeah.
it makes sense. Do you have any funny or crazy stories like when you were younger of things that you ended up doing that you, I don't know, barely made it through or something like that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is I went through such a hard time that it's hard to, I guess I could laugh at it now, but I was like, to be honest, I was like in and out of jail as a kid.
Mm.
I was on probation. I had a judge that scolded me numerous times in the courts, in front of my like probation officer, in front of counselors,
Oh
in
wow.
front of my family. And when I did turn my life around, or when I turned myself around when I was maybe 16, and I
Okay.
started getting some good momentum, and I graduated some treatment programs as a kid. I was in a group home,
Mm.
um, which I got out of early. And I went back to that same judge about a year later from the last time she had scolded me,
Oh
with
wow.
like all these letters of recommendation and people speaking on my behalf.
Yeah.
And she went from like the meanest judge in the world to actually inviting me over in front of her whole courtroom. She invited me over to her house,
Really?
to have coffee and donuts with her. Um, yeah, the next weekend. think I lost my audio.
Sorry, I accidentally tapped
Oh,
the mute
okay.
button. My
I thought that
apologies.
was me.
No, it's totally me. I was like, what's wrong? No, the question I have was, do you still have contact with her today? Is she still part of your life?
No, I lost contact with her. I mean, she was pretty old. So this was when I was, what, 16, so 25 years ago.
25, yeah.
She'd be pretty old by now. If not, she may not even be alive anymore.
Mm,
But I still do have contact with some mentors and other counselors who worked with me when I was a kid.
yeah.
Friends with them on Facebook, and another one, a guy named Fred Woods, who's a pastor now in Panama
Well,
City Beach, Florida.
oh, wow.
I got to go see him, 25, 30 years after we had last seen each other when I was down there for my first professional race
Yeah.
back in November.
Wow, that must have been a neat experience for him and you.
Yeah, yeah, it was great.
Yeah. What was it like when you first saw him for the first time after all that time? Like, was it an embrace?
It was an embrace. We both kind of commented on like how good the other person looked.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
cool.
man, we just sat, we talked for hours.
Yeah.
It was like nothing had changed. We just kind of picked up where we had left off,
Mm,
and I was still able to talk to him about some things I felt I needed to continue to work on in my life, and he was able to
mm,
give me some advice, and yeah, it was great.
yeah. That's awesome. When you were, I guess, growing up and moving past some of these things, um, have now that you've gotten older, have you picked out or kind of found things or patterns where you thought, oh well, if these are the core things that I was missing as a kid? Because you said you were raised primarily by your mom, and I imagine you
Hmm.
saw some probably decent men and then just really terrible role models, like you said. Did you ever pinpoint things that you realized, like, okay, this is the one thing or a few things that like I really missed out on that you maybe even want to instill in your children today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Seth. The biggest thing for me is that because I was raised by my mom, as a kid, I was home alone a lot
Mm-hmm.
because she was out working. And so, and I wasn't involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. So, a big thing with my kids is my wife and I are just very present in our boys' lives, and we keep them, very involved in a lot of activities and just expose them to not only a lot of different sports, but just opportunities to be around a lot of people and, all types or ages of people.
Yeah. Yeah, great answer. So I have another question along those lines. Because I grew up primarily around my mom, and I don't have kids yet.
Okay.
But I had a lot of female influence. I had some male influence, especially so when my dad passed away when I was 16. I found myself gravitating toward a lot of my friends' dads and just people that I looked up to for whatever reason. Some of them were healthy and some were unhealthy, to be completely honest. But as I got older, I started to pick out things like, okay, these are the core aspects and principles of a man that I kind of want to try to apply to myself. So my question is, as you have now moved into that role where like you are becoming or you are a father and you're putting those pieces out that you've kind of learned, can you recall like key mentors of people who came into your life or role models that you eventually did figure out that you wanted to take on those principles as you pass those on?
Yeah. So I would say, so I should also mention like my father wasn't like fully like out of my life growing up. It was just
Okay.
my mom had custody of me.
Okay.
And for a long time, my dad, who I call Pops was living in different parts of the country for
Okay.
work. And so a lot of times I would only see him, maybe for a couple weeks during the summer,
Sure.
or every other weekend or so. Um, but a lot of the qualities that my dad had, I I looked up to a lot, and those were things that I wanted to see my kids have. And
Yeah.
my dad was very personable, very funny, very
Oh,
witty,
that's awesome.
very outgoing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not always something I felt like I was growing up. And
Mm-hmm.
so, those are things that I look at my kids, and when I see my kids are kind of acting like my dad,
Yeah.
you know, I feel better because I tend to worry a lot, um, just wanting to make sure I'm doing a good job as a parent.
Yeah. What are some signs that you have gotten or that you get that bring you peace about like, yeah, I am a good parent. Like I'm figuring it out.
My oldest son Mason,
Okay.
he came home with straight A's on his
Okay.
first
Let's
report
go.
card this
Nice.
year. So, and that was a big surprise for us. So, I mean, not a huge surprise. We knew he was smart, but we just weren't getting feedback, or we weren't hearing from the school that, oh, he's the best student in the class.
Yeah.
And so the report card was a really cool surprise.
Yeah.
And and both kids are both very observant.
Mm.
They ask a lot of questions. They're not afraid to ask questions,
Yeah.
and they're good around people.
Yeah.
So it's that makes me feel better, and like we're doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I'm gonna have to ask you some parenting advice here in a little while because I'm planning on having kids here in the next few years. But since you're a few steps ahead of me, I figure I might be able to draw some advice or get a little heads up on the game.
I got years of advice for you, my man.
Yeah, for sure. I have
I'm,
to
I'm
have
more
you write it.
than I'm more than halfway done so far. So
Yeah. You said they're how old again? 6 and what?
9 and 11.
Oh, 9 and 11. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Halfway. Yeah, it's crazy how it goes fast. It's so funny. I was um, with some friends this weekend, and they're a bit older than me, about 10 years older than me, actually, honestly, around your age, and they have kids. They're a little bit younger than you, but I was talking, or younger than your kids. But I was talking to one of the kids, and he just told me he had his 10th birthday, and it's just wild because I remember turning 10 and how it was such a big deal with turning double digits, and I was just trying to, as I'm talking to him, like put myself back in that 10-year-old brain. Like, what are the things I was interested in? Life was so like black and white and simple in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. It's just so interesting to try to take it down a notch and have those conversations. But it's crazy how fast time goes. I'm sure before you know it, your kids are going to be professional triathletes.
That would be really cool. That would be really
Yeah.
cool.
So let's go back to high school for a second. What was it in high school that you found the most identity in? Because again, it was a hard time, but I know for me, I can think of some things that like I really kind of latched onto, and that was my group for whatever reason. Can you think back on the things that like you really latched onto that gave you a sense of purpose or power and control when you were younger?
Yeah, so for me, high school, I went to an alternative school because of the trouble that I got into. I was expelled from public schools
Yeah.
in the school district. And so at the alternative school, the classes were very small. We had a lot of attention from teachers. We were able to develop, pretty close relationships with our teachers. And the principal of our alternative school, there was maybe, I think, 70, 60 or 70 kids that went to our high school.
Okay.
The principal used to have me come in whenever there was donors who were checking out the alternative school because they were a nonprofit.
Yeah.
She would invite me as one of the students to come and speak to the donors and share
Oh,
my
really?
story.
Wow.
And then I would go and give the donors a tour of the school. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And it gave me kind of a sense that, at first when I started going to this alternative school, I was just going to school to stop getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And eventually, as I was going to school, it started to change, and I was going to school for myself because I had, dreams. I wanted to, go to college someday and have a
Yeah.
profession. And then eventually I started giving these tours, and then it was more than just about me. I realized I was helping the school as well,
Yeah.
and helping future students of the program. So that was one thing. And then the other piece was I didn't play any organized sports as a kid, except for the local community center had a boxing gym.
Oh, sick.
And so I used to go to boxing, and eventually my alternative school, which didn't have a PE class, I was allowed to go to boxing in the evenings to
Yeah.
fulfill my PE requirements for high school.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So it was in boxing where I kind of learned that like real kind of hard work ethic that
Mm,
I would end up using, as an adult eventually when I became a triathlete. And that's also where I learned how to run
yeah.
was in boxing.
Cardio is a big part to play, I guess, in boxing. I don't know much about it, but I've heard that it's hard work.
Yeah, we call it road work in boxing. You got to get out. Every boxer has to be a runner.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you miss it?
Um, I do miss it a little bit, but I still am involved. I coach a boxing class out
Oh,
here
that's
in
awesome.
Vancouver, and occasionally I get in the ring and I'll do some sparring.
Yeah,
So I still get a little taste of it every now and then,
yeah,
but I can't do it too much, or else it affects my triathlon training and
yeah. Getting beat up. When you do sparring, do
yeah.
you like take hits and give hits, or you guys just kind of like touch and go?
And we take hits and give hits. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But you learn to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
So the hits aren't as bad as when I was younger, when I didn't really know how to defend myself properly.
Oh, okay. Interesting. There is, I mean, curious for that. So I've been doing, talking with my counselor or therapist, whatever you want to say. And one of the things I came across was like growing up, because I'm smaller, I'm only 5'5" and some change, 120 pounds. And growing up, I was very small and I would get picked on quite a bit. And I got into a few fights and I was always so upset at myself because I had a lot of this just intense anger and frustration toward the individual or the situation, but I could never seem to like rein it in to control myself to make a calculated move or a dodge or throw a punch or whatever. And so my therapist is like, well, we dug deep because it's like I want a sense of control, da 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 da, and be able to compose myself in an intense situation. But she recommended that I take some kind of self defense or boxing class or something like that. So I've been strongly consider it. So I have some interest in that. So if I ever come to Vancouver, maybe I'd take a couple classes from you or something.
I would love to take you to our boxing gym. You would love it. It's really
Y-
cool.
Yeah,
And besides boxing, the other thing that's really popular right now is jujitsu.
yeah, yeah,
So you could look into that as well.
yeah. I have to check it out. Do you do jujitsu as well?
I don't. I
Okay.
don't. That'd be. If, I only have so much time to spread around in the week, but I know a lot of people that are into that right now, and I think it's just part of it's required for MMA that you have some jujitsu
Yeah.
experience. So I think that's part of the reason why it's gotten popular.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see. Maybe we'll do like a little hybrid of jujitsu and triathlon someday where T1 and T2 are jujitsu matches.
That would be fun. I've always wondered, like, yeah, how good I would be if we combined boxing with triathlon somehow.
Yeah. It would be wild. Oh, that would be wild. I actually, so do you know Nicholas Chase from RTS by chance?
I don't know Nick Chase, but I know of him. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yep.
he's coaching me right now, but we're talking about
Oh, okay.
doing this thing called, or actually we don't have a name for it yet, but it's going to be like a Walmart triathlon. And where you go into Walmart, you have a certain amount of time and money to buy all the gear you would need to swim, bike, and run, and then go and race the course. But in T1 and T2, we were joking around about having some type of a, like dodgeball match or something crazy to where like if you get hit or shot with a Nerf gun or something that you have so many second penalty or something like that. I
Oh,
go to
that's
a penalty
awesome.
box in between, but not totally related to jujitsu. Probably don't want to like smack each other too hard, but I think it'd be hilarious to do something like that. So we'll see what
So how
happens.
how long would this Walmart triathlon be?
It's a
Like,
good
what's the
question.
distances?
So I was using ChatGPT to come up with a plan and writing down some ideas, and I couldn't figure out because I figured the biggest bikes, some of these guys and girls probably won't even be able to fit on, so it's going to be uncomfortable, and I don't want anyone to get injured. So I was thinking like 500 to 1,000 yard swim, nothing super crazy. You have to use weird floaty devices, maybe like a 5 to 7 mile bike and a 5 to 10K run at the max. But it would be funny if it was like really like videoed like a professional, legitimate race, and like the media was really put on it. But then everyone just looks super ridiculous, as they're trying to make that happen. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. And okay, this is a great idea. So the swim, you'd probably have like some like kids goggles, I imagine,
Yeah,
like, or it's just some big huge like
Yeah,
scuba mask goggles.
exactly. Something wild.
Where would the swim take place? Because it's a parking lot
So
triathlon. So
yeah, so good point. So we actually may not have it at the actual Walmart because if we did, we'd have to like I don't know, maybe you could put like 5 or 6 above ground pools next to each other and like swim to one length and hop over the other and
hop
swim to the other.
over, yeah.
So that could be fun. But we're gonna probably do it somewhere in St. George because that's where Nick's from, and that's just the idea that's been thrown out. Maybe there's a better area. But then
Maybe
just have it right. Yeah, go for it.
yeah, maybe there's a Walmart somewhere next to like a 24-hour fitness that has like an indoor 3-lane pool or something.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's cool. And then do the bike, because the bike usually a Walmart's in like a kind of a near a busy street, so maybe you
Yeah.
just do the bike around the multi
Around the
loops around the
parking lot.
parking lot.
Yeah. That would be actually a good idea.
Be
I wonder,
spectator friendly that way.
yeah, I wonder if you could partner with a Walmart for like publicity on their sake. They give you some money to like just use whatever you want in the store, then have the swim in or outside or next to the, and then do it in the parking lot, the run and the bike. I think that'd be actually a really funny idea.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who
Maybe
works at
this is
Walmart?
where the money is at in triathlon.
Yeah.
That maybe
Just amazing publicity stunts like this. Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, not to digress too much. Back to some more serious topics. I want to get into because you have been pretty open in the past several months or year, just with your personal journey, especially around overcoming narcotics and just the life that you've been able to live and build for yourself, kind of post this era of addiction, which is really interesting to me because in other ways I've struggled with addiction. So there's a true curiosity coming out in these questions. So my first question along this journey is, how did you first get into these mind-altering substances?
Yeah, good question. This was as a kid. I was exposed to it at an early age, just part of the environment I grew up in.
Like really
And
young?
yeah, like early teens or
Hmm.
12 years old.
Well,
Um, and then when I started getting in trouble is when the authoritative figures started to say, "Hey, look, you need drug and alcohol treatment as well as treatment to start getting out of trouble."
yeah.
And I did some of that treatment as a teenager. Then I started, going, having mentors and going to alternative school and stuff and getting a lot of support as we discussed. And things kind of, my disease kind of went dormant for a
Hmm.
while. And I was able to just really focus on myself and trying to get myself established in a career. Um, but it's a disease that really there's no known cure, and
Mm.
you always need to be working to fight it. And because usually if you ignore it or you try to act like it doesn't, you're cured. That's when your mind starts playing tricks on you, and you get
Mm.
back to where you were before,
Mm.
which is not in a good place. And so I basically in my 20s, as I got established in my career, and I started making good money, just like little things started happening in my life where I started getting exposed to drugs and alcohol again, little by little,
Mm.
and just over time, things got out of control. Um,
What is that act like? How so? How did it get out of control? Like, is this unpack that for me for a little bit, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, it's just I'm somebody that I can't handle. I'm one of those people that just can't handle alcohol. So if I drink and I start drinking too much, which is usually going to happen if I'm in an environment that is kind of made for drinking a lot, I start making bad decisions. So there's just some of that, and then really what happened once we had kids. I said I was been doing triathlon since 2006. That was well before we ever had kids. My wife and I had kids. Before my wife and I had even met.
Yeah.
Um, our first son was born in 2012. Our second son, Max, was born in 2014. And it was at that time when I had young kids, I took a step away from triathlon to really just focus on
Focus on the
being
family.
a dad.
Sure.
And that was kind of the time when um, things with like prescription pain medication in this country like really started getting out of control, and I was just one of the victims
Hmm.
of that whole thing, and I ended up being addicted to prescription opiates,
Wow.
and it became a daily habit where I had to, continue to take those, or else I would go into full blown withdrawal.
Hmm. What does withdrawal look like for those types of drugs?
It's not pretty. It's if you do it cold turkey, um, you are. I guess it feels a lot like maybe how you feel after an Ironman.
Yeah.
You're very achy. You're sweaty.
Hmm.
Uh, you can't really control. You're in and out of the bathroom all day.
Wow.
Some people you might be throwing up a lot. Um,
So
and
interesting.
then and then you have a lot of anxiety. So for me, it was I tried going back into the office after a couple of days of quitting cold turkey, and I was in this job that I'd been working for 17 years at that time, and it felt like it was my first day on the job,
Wow.
and I was having full blown panic attacks.
Wow. To get through that, I mean, it sounds like, is it just a white knuckling process? You put yourself in a place where people support you and you just have to white knuckle through it?
Well, it's a good question. So the first thing I did is I ended up going and seeing a doctor,
Okay.
and this might have been this in hindsight was probably not the best thing for me at the time,
Yeah.
but I thought it was. I went and saw the doctor, and they put me on medical assistance therapy. So for me, that was Suboxone, and that was in 2016.
Okay.
And Suboxone basically is a very powerful opioid that
Hmm.
helps addicts um, come out of withdrawal, so you're not
Yeah.
having those withdrawal symptoms, and you don't have the urges to use any other opiates. So it takes away those cravings. So you're able to just take this medication, not get high, not have withdrawals anymore, and basically just get back to life.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a very powerful. You don't realize it, but it's a very powerful drug, and it took. I was on it for 4 years before I finally got off, and once I got off, it was like getting off those opiates all over again. I had to go through all
Mm.
the withdrawals and everything
Really?
to get done with that. So, really, what helped me through all that was getting involved with the Narcotics Anonymous program, and going to meetings every week, and eventually helping run those meetings, which kind of gave me another sense of purpose,
Hmm.
where it was not just for myself, but I was also helping other addicts as well.
Yeah. That it's interesting you mentioned that because I was interviewing as people will hear Justin Slade last week from Aqua Bears. I guess you met him if I'm not
Love
mistaken. Yeah,
Justin, yeah.
yeah, cool guy. And he's
Good to get
gone through
time.
that program, that 12-step Narcotics Anonymous program. I believe the same, like modeled after the same one that's modeled after AA. Um,
Yeah.
do you still keep in contact with that community just to kind of keep that sense of purpose? Yeah.
Yeah, I have to, because again, it goes back to the part where it's like it's a disease. Addiction is a disease that you always have to be,
Mm.
you always have to be mindful of, and always have to be working on.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, just like any disease, eventually those symptoms are going to resurface. So
Yeah.
yeah, I still go to meetings at least once a week. And I still talk to a lot of people in the Narcotics Anonymous program,
Yeah.
to just kind of give each other support.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's one piece of it for anybody who's wanting to overcome addiction is like you have to have a support system that's supporting you, but that you're also helping to support kind of the give take relationship. But I have another question for you because I was reading your post on Instagram that was kind of about this journey, and you said something like quote, you lost the desire, or you figured out how to lose the desire to use and find a new way to live. So can you boil that down for anyone who is like wanting to get to that point? Like, how do you lose that desire to use any addiction and find a new way to live?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. So really it comes down to you take things one day at a time. Um, and, as we know, just like with our training and seeing what like, training cycle will do to us, like over the course of a year, how much stronger you can get,
Hmm.
training consistently day after day.
Sure.
Um, Day after day, making the decision, not to use any mind altering substances and take care of your body and take care of yourself, like spiritually, whether that's, for somebody who goes to church, or whether that's for somebody who goes to a Narcotics Anonymous program, or whether that's somebody who likes to meditate, just some sort of mindfulness. Like over time, like you're going to see so you're going to have so much joy and so much good is going to come into your life from making these positive decisions day after day,
Yeah.
that like you have a new purpose. Like you're no longer living thinking about, oh, you feel like crap because, you used drugs for all these years, or, thinking about how you're going to, get high again, or go drink again.
Yeah.
Now you have new dreams and new goals, and you have so much momentum from just like taking things day after day, and days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and months eventually turn into years.
Yeah.
And that's yeah.
Great answer. I have some more follow up questions because I actually am really curious about this because I've been on and off the bandwagon of addiction, not with drugs, but just to be completely open and honest, like pornography, something I don't think is good for the soul by any means. And it's actually, I'll just be completely open and honest. It was almost 2 months that I was sober, clean, and then like just recently had a mess up, I guess is the best way to say it. So I'm like really interested to like kick this away. So when it comes to drugs and anything else that you're maybe fighting, for me, whenever I'm like most enticed or tempted or whatever kind of phraseology we want to use, there's like most of the time like a very real like urge within to like to use whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, is that something that you've struggled with? Is it in the same way when it comes to like the narcotics or the alcohol or anything like that? Like you get that, and so what do you do? Like, what is your first step? You calling somebody? Or are you writing it down? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So you definitely in the program, we pick up the phone and we call another fellow addict. So and so like thanks for like being vulnerable, like Seth, and sharing that about yourself. And that's like the first thing I would say is like 2 months is awesome. And even if you make one slip up, that does not erase all the momentum that you gain for those first 2 months. So like, just because maybe in your mind you're starting to count the clock over,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you haven't made significant amount of progress,
Mm.
in the last like 2 months, and what you've done and all those positive decisions that you made every day. But yeah, man, pick up the phone, like call somebody, and you can call me like anytime if like you feel like you have an
Thanks,
urge,
man. I appreciate
and
it.
I would do the same with you too.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So,
But sharing about it, what we say in the program, like sharing about it, takes the power away from it,
hmm.
basically.
Well, I
So
just put this on a podcast, so hopefully,
yeah,
yeah, we'll see what happens.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time, just think about the podcast.
Yeah. This will be airing in a few months, so hopefully I can have more. Well, I will. I'm going to just put it into, I'm going to have sobriety through that because, yeah, like it's no joke. And really, most people do, like, they struggle with something no matter what it is. So, yeah, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, thank you for that. I'll make sure to give you a call or someone. I need to get that back in my wheelhouse of tools. But one thing that you did briefly touch on that you said that really struck a chord was like the resetting of time. So you saying it means one thing, as in like, I messed this all up, or I fell off the wagon at this point. Believing that is not an easy thing to do, because
Mm-hmm.
for me, a person focused on whatever success looks like, that makes it very hard. So I think belief is really important there. But what about the shame associated? Because I know that you've been on this journey and you've been sober since January 6th, 2020. So it's like 4 years and some change. That's a long time. But in the past, when you've kind of fallen off that bandwagon, what was worse that you were dealing with? The immediate, like, kind of the shame after doing that, or like the physical, like almost illness that comes with it?
Oh, that's a good question. It was usually a little bit of both. I would always feel some shame. I think it was mostly the shame.
Yeah.
And for me, because I started going to meetings back in 2019. So I got on the Suboxone in 2016. And then I knew pretty after a few years that it was something I was going to have to get off. I couldn't be on forever, and so I started going to meetings in 2019, and I had several slip ups and relapses in that process, and it was very tough on my wife.
Hmm.
And there was a point where she maybe probably started to doubt and thought things were just going to keep getting worse.
Wow. Yeah. That's
And
hard.
so there was a lot of guilt and there was a lot of shame, not just at myself, but how I felt around my own wife, and maybe that I was turning into like some of the bad role models that I had grown up
Hmm.
around as a kid. And so as a father, like there was a lot of shame too. Um, but the biggest thing was whenever there was a slip up, it was immediately going back to a meeting, like right away, not letting it be a week's worth of slip ups or 2 months worth of slip ups.
Yeah.
It was one small slip up, and then I was back in a meeting and I was talking about it with other recovering addicts
Hmm.
and figuring out a way how I was not going to let that happen next time.
Yeah.
And eventually, things clicked, and uh, January 5th, 2020 was the last slip up, and 2000, January 6th, 2020, I've been clean and sober ever since.
Yeah. Which we should not just gloss over. That's awesome. Super happy, if it makes any difference. Proud that like you've been through that journey. That's such an amazing thing, because not many people are able to claim that. But that's a really inspiring thing. So I'm glad that you especially made that post. That's a really big thing.
Thanks, man. That was also my first time being public about it. I don't like,
Yeah.
good close friends and family, and obviously other people in the program
Mm.
knew about this, but I had never been like public about it, and I was always worried that I would get, people would look at me the wrong way, or
Yeah.
I would get negative comments,
Yeah.
or maybe it would hurt me professionally.
Mm.
And I got nothing but like positive feedback, and people actually, opening up to me about,
Their
how
past.
areas where maybe I was inspiring them to,
Mm.
you know, to clean up certain parts of their lives, or,
Yeah.
address addiction issues they were facing.
Yeah. A few more
So, yeah.
questions. Yeah, sorry. A few more questions around this, because I just think it's super fascinating, because it's such a, I think, important conversation to have in today's world. When it comes to your marriage, I know from my experience in the past, whenever there's been a struggle, my wife and I, we've come to just like, it almost felt like an impasse where we're both struggling with something and we're not able to get over this hump. And for me, as the man in the relationship, and who I would consider that kind of the leader, I think the male is responsible for kind of setting the tone and the belief for and the vision for what the future can be in a marriage. Um, and when my wife lost, in one point in our marriage a few years ago, lost kind of the vision for what we were as a couple, and we talked about divorce and stuff like that, which I never thought would ever happen. That was very hard for me to like take a step back and have the belief, and I hesitate to say the courage, but I'll say the courage to like, okay, let's put a plan into place where you're going to counseling, I'm going to counseling, we're going separately and together, and we're working through this and trying to get our commitment levels up. What did you do in those moments? Because for me, I felt like that was really hard for me to do. I had to call on some friends and family to like find that belief to really charge forward, even though it felt like it may be for nothing. Um, if that makes sense, how did you find that solidarity to step forward and to fight for what she may have lost faith in?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Ashley is like the best thing that has ever happened to me. And
That's my wife's name too. By the way, that's awesome. I didn't
are
know
you
that.
serious? Really?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Ashley.
That's awesome. Um, yes, Ashley is like she's one of a kind. She's somebody that has always kind of made up for, instead of, playing on my like weaknesses, she has always like kind of helped empower my strengths.
Mm,
And in the areas where I am lacking, like she's really, really strong in. So yeah, for me, it was like I knew it was going to be the biggest loss in the world if I ever like lost my wife,
mm,
to making like bad decisions, or if she ever would walk out on me. Um, and so like for me, I just wanted to do whatever I could to like show her that, because after a while, like you can't just say like I promise I'll do better. Like sometimes you just have to show them.
yeah, action.
Um, And so I had to take action. I had to prove to her, like day after day, week after week, that, things had changed and they were different.
Sure.
Um, but she does a lot of work like on herself.
Hmm.
And so that inspires me to continue to work on myself as well. So, I'm not the only one like working on it in this
Sure.
relationship. Like she's also working on it and finding ways to always be better, and for us to have a better relationship.
Mm.
So I hope that answers the question
Yeah, it,
somewhat.
it does.
Did
Go for it.
what how was counseling for you guys? Was it actual like just separate counseling or
Separate and together. We found someone
okay?
to see both. Yeah, and then we did it separately because, just full disclosure, we had gone through just a crazy situation in like a short amount of time. I was held at gunpoint. I was already struggling with just like issues in my life. I was like, I'd never really experienced PTSD before in a real way, where like I told the story and it made me feel every time like exhausted, like I had just run a marathon, and I felt like, so there was all of that. And we had just started to kind of work through that as a couple, and I was really mentally unstable. And then her grandfather had this tragic tractor accident when we were all home at her family's house for Christmas. He was like patriarch of this huge family with 11 cousins. Everyone's relatively very close. I think a very rare situation. So that was a huge hit. And it just,
Oh
all
my
these things
gosh.
compounded. So when that was all happening, I don't want to throw my wife under the bus. She's an amazing woman, and similarly to how Ashley sees you, she sees the positives in me whenever I've expressed doubt in myself about very serious things. I mean, even when like honey, like I don't, I don't ever want to be put in a place where I could cheat or leave or whatever. Like I just don't trust myself, and I need to like get strong in that area. She always instills more trust and belief in me than I have ever had in myself. So like that's a huge thing, and I don't want to overshadow or under say that, whatever the best use of words would be, because she's a super strong person. But to answer your question, it went really good. We walked into the first like together counseling session, and our counselor slash therapist at the time asked us what our level of commitment was to each other on a scale of 1 to 10. I believe hers was like a 2 to a 3, and mine was like a 5 to a 6. And by the time we left, and 6 months later, she was at like a 9 to 10, and I was at like an 8. So she'd passed me up.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and we're both very committed now, and I think that every cyclical pattern we've gone through, where it's been a very low low to a new high, and once we complete that circle each time, it just binds us, I think, to a different level because we've been through something horrible. We've come through it, and when I was young and she was young and we were married, it was easier to kind of get lost in the sauce and like just be in this depressive mindset and not be able to see beyond the dark horizon kind of a
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
So it's been very good. We've become closer than we ever been before. We've been married 7 years, and or is it gonna be 8 years? I think it'll be 8 years in
Nice.
June, or seven. I can't remember. I think maybe seven. Anyway, yeah. So it's been really good.
Good job, you guys. I'm
Yeah.
really
Thanks.
sorry to hear about her grandfather and
Yeah.
the
Thank you.
gunpoint situation. That yeah, that's good. I mean, it says a lot that you guys were able to walk through all that and
Yeah.
have the courage to seek help, like outside of the relationship.
Yeah.
So that's
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, therapy, I can't talk it up enough for people because I did what was called EMDR therapy specifically for the PTSD stuff, and I was able to come through it with a severity level on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I can't take this, like on a 1 to 2. Right when I first went in there talking about that situation, it was like a 9 to 10. So it really does make a huge difference. I think so. Yeah.
wow, nice.
So a few other questions for you, and then we'll move into the triathlon stuff because I want to ask about your professional career and how that kind of plays into this whole contextual situation and life that you've built for yourself. You mentioned that spirituality, having a sense of mindfulness, is important to this journey, and I think this could be applied with or without addiction. Although I think most people struggle with probably some form of it. So for you, what does spiritually mean for you, and then how do you keep mindfulness, like practically?
Yeah, I mean that's something I'm still working on. For me, like spiritually, like I grew up. I don't go to church, but I grew up always like believing in God. I was baptized at 10 years old,
Okay,
um,
thanks.
and in the program of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, you kind of uh, turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him, and so
Mm,
you can kind of make up like who like your higher power is going to be, and so to a sense, like for me spiritually, for me it's a lot of inner dialogue and just like having faith, in myself and in others, and then just the universe. Um, and then we do. I do a lot of like meditating and like focus work, like in the
okay.
evenings, just to kind of like wind down and just to kind of get like regrounded.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's that, and then there's also just kind of the group conscience of Narcotics Anonymous, which a lot of people look at that as a higher power, and that's just kind of the when a lot of people come together, for like a common good,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because they're all like people who are addicts,
Hmm.
um, but when we all come together, like we can be like the best, most responsible, like most loving group of people that like anybody's ever met. Like we'll go to like hotels and like conventions and stuff, and
Yeah.
staff always tells us like we're the best like guests they've ever had, even though there's like 100 of us,
Wow.
because we're all here for like one common purpose, and
Yeah.
like we're all spiritually connected.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that's pretty meaningful. So what do you when you have that grounding in the evenings? It sounds like what are you meditating on? Is it a specific thought, mantra? Uh, yeah. What is it?
yeah, for me, I'm just trying to. For me, it's more of like just kind of be in the moment and just not to kind of drown out the noise. So I'm really just, and a lot of this comes down to like, I know it's helping me with triathlon as well, and maybe like, especially
Sure.
with like my swimming. And I actually learned a lot of this from a swim camp that I did recently in
Oh, really?
the Woodlands, Texas for pro triathletes last January. And we basically just do like a lot of focus work and work on like tuning out all the random thoughts that come into your head. And sometimes we just try to focus and not think about anything, and that's the best form of mindfulness you can have is just not stressing out about stuff, not thinking about anything
Just
else,
being at
just
peace.
yeah, just a blank slate.
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'll have to give that a shot. I've done meditation, but I've always struggled with my personality to sit down and really just like focus on one thing, or like you said, kind of just be at a calm, be at a quiet, peaceful state is not doesn't come naturally to me like at all. But I guess that's the point of it. Like it's not supposed to a degree.
Yeah, I don't. It didn't doesn't come naturally for me too. I have so many thoughts that come into my head, and I've learned to be okay with like, all right, it's okay for the thoughts to come through your head. You just
Hmm.
have to learn how to like, as soon as they come in, you push them away,
Yeah.
and you don't dwell on the thoughts, or you don't let them stay in there. They just kind of come and they go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let them bounce. We can get out quick. I'll have to
Yeah.
give that some more practice.
So I'm not a huge expert on it though. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
still a work in progress for me. So
That's okay, man. That's where we all are. You're ahead of most of us, I think, that are probably listening right now. So that's good. Thank you for sharing. Um, so let's shift gears actually now to triathlon. You have been doing this since 2006. You are now a professional in 2024. This is um, what's you say? How do you say it? Your first year as a pro, rookie year,
rookie, yeah,
rookie year
yeah.
as a professional. So the first question: what is triathlon to you?
I mean, triathlon is for me. It's a lifestyle.
Mm.
Um, it is. It's always on my mind in some way or form. Whether that's what races I have coming up or how I'm going to fit my training in.
Yeah,
Um, it's triathlon. I've told people before. So triathlon. I raced triathlons as an amateur, and um, in my worst of my addiction, I was completely out of the sport. But I raced triathlons when I was still not treating my body well, and drinking a lot and stuff like that.
yeah.
And I always felt the triathlon saved me back then from like letting like my addiction go,
Run
run
rampant.
wild in my life.
Hmm.
So triathlon has saved my life. I feel in many ways,
Yeah,
and then now that I've had this this significant amount of time clean and treating my body well, like now I'm being able to see like where I can really go with triathlon. So maybe in a couple of years I'll have a different answer for what triathlon means to me after I get my
sure.
butt kicked in the pro field.
Yeah.
So
When's your first pro race this year? Or have you haven't had it yet, have you?
I did have one pro race in November last year at Ironman, Florida.
That's right. Yeah.
And then Oceanside 70.3, April 6th, and Ironman, Texas, April 27th will be the next two races.
Yeah. So now that you've moved from the amateur field to the pro field, what does it look like in your mind for just, I don't know, if, I hesitate to say expectations, but goals or thoughts about moving forward? Like, what's your mental headspace? Is it different now than it was when you were an amateur?
Yeah, so it's a lot less about winning. I was very like eyes on in racing amateur the last few years. I was very like eyes on the prize, racing to go out and like win an overall amateur race. And 42 years old now, racing in the pro field. It's there. I mean, I guess if half the field takes a wrong turn on the bike and like rides an extra 6 miles or something, like I might have a shot at winning an Ironman someday. But
For sure.
um, yeah, I'm not thinking that I'm out to win these races, but for me, it's more about the process and like seeing like how fast, how far I can push my body, and if I can continue to kind of defy the odds and keep getting faster, at this age. Um, I'd like to see how close I can get to like 8 hours flat or be the first. I don't know if an over 40 pro, maybe Tim O'Donnell, has
Yeah.
gone under 8 hours in an Ironman.
Is that when he
But
did? Yeah. That was like one of his last few races, right?
yeah, maybe. So I'd like to be maybe one of the first few 40-year-old
Just to
men to
be.
go under 8 hours in an Ironman. That'd be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. What is your fastest Ironman to date?
It was Ironman in Florida.
Okay,
Last year it was 8 hours and 24 minutes.
nice, man. Yeah, yeah, that's possible. I mean, sheesh. I don't want to put any cap on anybody. I never dreamed that I'd be able to do what I'm doing, and I'm 31. And yeah, it's just there's so many people pushing the envelope. It seems like the performance across all ages has just dramatically increased, even since I've been involved in the sport, and it's only been like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like if I was doing the times that I could do now in like 2010, I would be telling you, oh, I'm out to train to like win these races because
Yeah,
the times I could do now would be winning races in 2010,
yeah,
and that's not the case anymore.
it's
It's
such a different world.
yeah.
Do you like that, or is it? Yeah, do you like that?
Oh, I like it. Yeah, because I love to see where the sport is going and how um, we're still learning things and figuring out things that work and ways to get faster and just like with the like one of the things for me was like learning to increase my carbohydrate
Yeah,
consumption
intake.
like per
Hmm.
hour. Back in 2010, I was probably taking in 50 grams of carbs per hour,
Wow.
and now I'm taking in 120.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
and
amazing.
and I probably if the sport hadn't been growing and finding ways to get faster, I probably wouldn't know about
Yeah.
you know just pounding sugar in my system, and
Yeah, yeah,
that
for
that can
sure.
help me get faster.
What's your favorite kind of carb to like take in when you're racing? Do you have like a set type of system that you're using?
For 70.3s, I take in Martin drink mix,
Okay.
and then for Ironman, I'll do half of the bike with Martin. Like this, the last half of the bike will be Martin. The first half of the bike is like a homebrew, homemade maltodextrin, fructose,
Okay.
sodium electrolyte mix.
Why the split?
But just because it's cheaper to
Okay.
do the homemade
I love
version,
it.
and I'm not sponsored yet by
Yeah.
Martin, so that would be
Not
really
yet.
cool. Um, and yeah, that's and it. I think it kind of helps. It's just a different flavor, and so it's
Yeah.
nice to not just be
Yeah.
taking the same
Flavor
thing for four
fatigue.
and a half
For sure.
hours.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I talked to you back when I did Ironman Wisconsin and had a pretty good blow up. And up to that point, like I had really not had any real precision with the carbs and how much I was taking per hour. And anyway, I've been on it now, and I found something that really works, and I'm up to almost 80 grams an hour now, which was quite a bit more than what when I first talked to you. I think I was probably floating similar to what you were back in the day, like 40,
Yeah.
50. And what's worked really great for me has actually been maple syrup mixed with water. It's really easy to like compact those carbs in there, and it's flavor fatigue. It doesn't kill me, but I do like the Redmond Relight for the salt stuff, so I can adjust the salt levels and sodium and electrolyte levels based on what kind of the heat and the situation that I've got going on outside.
Wait, what is that? Redmond
It's called
Relay?
Redmond. So Redmond is a salt brand. They make a bunch of different salts, but they have this thing in a little container. I can send it to you and link it in the show notes for anybody. It's called Redmond Relight, and they have basically it's like these tiny little scoops, and each scoop is 800 milligrams of salt, and it's flavored slightly as well. So what I do is like the high quality maple syrup I can find, and then I'll put scoops of that in there, but with the and they have like lime and watermelon, strawberry, and some other flavors, or you can get no flavor, but it
Oh,
tastes like
nice.
apple juice when I get it all mixed up. Like some people don't like it, but I love it, and my stomach seems to handle it really well. Like I haven't been cramping, so the first race is going to be the real test coming up in St. Anthony's. But yeah,
And do you
I
mix it with the maple syrup?
I do. Yeah, maple
Okay.
syrup. Like I'm doing. It's crazy. It's a lot of maple syrup. It ends up being almost like 3/4 cup of maple syrup and like in this bottle. And then I'll throw in water to fill it up, and then the Redmond Relight based on what the heat is outside and how much I think I'll be sweating. But I love it.
You, you put maple syrup in a precision hydration bottle.
You know why I use this bottle now? So Mark Dubrick gave me some bottles that he had left over from Precision, and the reason I use these is because they don't leak. I had been using these cheaper specialized bottles, and they are leaking all over my frame. So every time after a long ride, it's like I have like this film of sugar water that's just collected on my chain and all this stuff. And I'm like, not
Yeah.
anymore. Now these things, I know I'm doing a huge plug for Precision's bottles right now, but they work really, really well on the terms of keeping it inside the bottle. So I love it.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, they need to be sponsoring the podcast. Good grief.
All right, let's go
Um,
precision
yeah,
hydration.
come on,
Yeah.
Andy. So what would a successful career as a professional triathlete look like to you?
Ooh, I mean, honestly, I think if I can stay healthy these next couple years, and for me, the biggest goal this year is to try to make a swim pack and not get shot right off the back.
Yeah,
The first couple hundred yards of the swim, like I
yeah, the
was
takeout
in
speed is
Florida.
wild.
So it's just like, working on that swim confidence, that race start confidence, and being able to get off hard and then and settle in and be with the group. And really just kind of learn how to race with the pro field dynamics
Yeah,
and get off and run to my potential, which I still feel like I have the potential to run a pretty darn fast half marathon and marathon off of the bike.
yeah,
So yeah, it's I don't I it's I probably should think about it more like what's the 5 year plan here, guy.
yeah, yeah, sure.
My wife probably wants to know too, like
Yeah,
what's the exit plan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When-
So
Once you
little
get
does she
signed with
know, like,
200.
yeah, little does she know, like, I got age group world championships. I'll be going for in my 60s.
Yeah, that's so funny. Does she do any triathlon related stuff?
No,
No.
no,
Yeah,
no. One
that's okay.
triathlete is enough in the family.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So tell me about your small business that you've kind of got going on the side. It sounds like that's how you provide for the family, and then you're also doing the triathlon stuff, which is a lot.
Yeah, so in my early 20s, when I was 19, I started in the accounts receivable management and business to business debt collection industry,
Wow.
which can be a very exciting industry. It was probably more exciting back in the early 2000s because it was a very kind of cutthroat, go get 'em, type industry where it's business to business collections, and so we're going out collecting on like large balances that companies aren't paying their vendors, and
Yeah.
then we keep a percentage of it. So we do all the work like before the attorneys get involved, and hopefully keep it out of the legal process.
Yeah. How do you convince someone to do that, by the way?
Yeah, it's like so those are kind of the things I can't really talk about on this podcast.
You show up, you have a knife next to their electrical wires, pay or do die.
We used to do a lot of like we'd send out private investigators and they'd deliver letters in person and take pictures of
Holy.
businesses inventory. But
Yeah.
this day and age, it's much less. Um, it's not
Gorilla.
a Yeah, it's not a big. It's more transactional now, and it's more getting people on the phone, finding out like what their financial situation is, why they can't pay their bill, and then how this company is either going to try to settle the debt or make payment plans
Okay.
to keep our client happy.
Nice. So
So
that's what you're doing now.
yeah, I work on the sales side, so I really just kind of work with my clients and keep them updated on how we're doing across all of the accounts we're collecting on their behalf.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I started my own. I worked for a big company for about 8 years. Eventually started my own small bit agency.
Oh, cool.
I ran that for a while. Realized it was pretty hard to grow with just like the compliance and all the red tape in every state to collect. There's just a lot of regulation and compliance in our industry.
Yeah.
So eventually we folded the business back up with a large agency, and it's basically kind of like a car insurance company. Like, who's your insurance company? Like State Farm or
Farm Bureau of Tennessee, I think.
Yeah. And so they probably got an office, and they have like your insurance agent has his own corporate entity,
Yeah.
but he does business as like this larger
Hmm.
company, and they do all the back office work. And so I have a small business, but we do business as part of the large company. And
Okay,
then we
cool.
just split our profits down the middle with them at the end of each month.
Oh, nice. So it sounds like this business is I would imagine it would be seasonal for what you're making like in the high months, low months, based on just like taxes and how earnings are done, or am I incorrect?
It there can be a little bit of there can be some spikes around tax season because businesses have access to additional cash flow,
Hmm.
but it's usually pretty steady um, throughout the year
Yeah.
because they're businesses, so they're usually doing sales and stuff, throughout the year.
Yeah.
Um, so it's pretty. I wouldn't say it's seasonal, but we do see some spikes, like depending on the industry we're working on,
Yeah.
um, and uh, and if it's like tax season. So we're seeing a spike right now, definitely.
Okay, nice.
We definitely saw a spike during COVID when companies were getting
Tons of cash.
all the government money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they would get
Wow.
the government money, and then they would use that to settle old debts that they had.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
Do you think the government's ever going to come after those funds that they gave away?
it, it'd be a lot to go after. It'd be a big undertaking.
That's just
It
something
wouldn't be
like,
very popular.
yeah, I feel like, well, it's because even like the PPE loans or whatever. Because I mean, I don't know how much money they gave away. I benefited some from my one of my small businesses, and then they gave every American who knows how much money. But then when I was thinking about if when they go to start collecting some of those economic disaster loans, it's like,
Hmm.
how do you even do that? Talk about, I mean, it'd be good for your business. Are you guys going to be hired by the government to go after it? It's like, it's absolutely wild. Not to diverge too much, but it's just
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean they definitely are. Hiring one of the agencies out there probably to help
Yeah,
collect on those. But
yeah.
most of the PPP stuff was forgiven.
I
Um,
didn't even know that.
yeah, there was the actual PPP loans, which was for like your payroll,
Payroll Protective Program.
um,
Yeah.
and then there was like the economic impact disaster loan, which was an actual loan that they they expected you to pay back eventually.
Yeah.
So
We'll see.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Absolutely wild. So for the last few questions here, with triathlon and business and family, do you find that you keep those things pretty separated in the way that you operate mentally, or is there a lot of overlap? It's like within work and triathlon and family and triathlon in terms of how you approach it.
Yeah, it's quite the juggle. So in my 20s and early 30s, I was really establishing myself in this industry, in this business. So that took priority a lot of the times. And that's, I definitely did not have as much time to train back then as I do now.
Yeah.
Um, and now I kind of have things settled down and figured out. And, I have certain times of the day that I definitely need to get my work in. Um, but I have it structured basically so that I get all my work and all my training done before the kids get home from school every day.
Nice.
And then, so once they're home from school, I can turn
Full
into
time
go
dad.
dad mode and take them to football practice or baseball practice or help coach the boxing practice for the kids, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely though some overlap like on the weekends and
Sure.
stuff. So
Yeah. What is your favorite part of being a dad?
favorite part of being a dad is my kids make fun of me.
I love being made fun of by my kids.
I don't know why. I think it's because I know that they're like they make fun of all my little quirks and
Sure.
it just shows me that they're paying attention. Like
Yeah.
they must love me. They're
Yeah.
paying that much attention. So I like when they tease me and rag on me and They actually made fun. They didn't make fun of me for this podcast.
Okay.
They actually think this podcast is the coolest thing ever.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh, yeah, because you told me you had them listen to one of them, right? Or a few of them?
well, they saw the podcast on the Spotify app in our car,
Okay.
and there's like that Triathlon Life podcast and like
Yeah.
Ironman Talk and some like NFL podcasts, and then there's this podcast called Stupid Questions. And so, of course, that's the one they noticed. They go, "Stupid questions? What's stupid questions about?"
Yeah.
And then they started listening to it. They realized it was a triathlon podcast, and then they kept asking me like, "Dad, are you ever going to be on Stupid Questions podcast?" And I was
Oh,
like,
that's awesome.
"I don't know, son. I don't know." And I guess I just have to be invited someday.
Yeah.
I know the guy. I'm sure he'll invite me one day, and eventually he invited me. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, that's so cool. We'll have to. Can you get a reaction to them when they see it for the first time? Because they know you're coming on it, right? But like,
they do, and they keep asking. I think the first podcast they listened to was the one with Miguel Maddox,
okay,
and for some reason they like the question that stood out to them because they're like, "Oh, stupid questions! So you must be asking stupid questions."
mm-hmm.
And so this question that stuck out to them was like, "When did you first get introduced to oatmeal?"
Yeah,
And he asked that to Miguel,
yeah.
and I eat oatmeal every morning. That's like the only thing I ever eat in the mornings, and
Oh, yeah.
so my younger son Max always comes in my office every day and he goes, "So Dad, when did you first get introduced to oatmeal?"
That's so awesome to know that. There's a little bit of legacy living in that question. That's so funny.
Yeah,
Was that the 9 year old or the
yeah, it's my
was the
youngest
youngest?
9-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, good for him. That's awesome. That's really cool, man. Thanks for sharing that. That makes me. It's been really a journey doing this, but it's been so cool to kind of see and hear little things out in the wild about the podcast, like an impact it made on someone, or someone reaches out, or they say they like something. But hearing those little stories, like it makes it more real to me. Because as far as I'm concerned, really, the podcast exists in this one room, in this one studio at my friend's house, where I kind of make it all happen, and he rents out a room to me. So it's cool to see that it goes beyond these walls in that way. So thanks so much for being a part of it.
yeah, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here, and it's an honor. Like, it's amazing the roster of guests that you've had on this podcast, like so early in its in its age. Like, you've had some great names on here, man. So it's an honor to be on it and be included in that list of like great athletes and
Yeah, man.
influential people in our niche sport.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, it's a pleasure and honor to have you on as well, and I hope that it continues to grow to be a platform for a place for people to get to know who the athletes are, the founders are behind more than just what they do, but what makes them who they are. Because I think I think triathlon's super interesting, and I love the data and the stats and stuff. But if we can continue to humanize people and keep that is a very real part of the sport, because I think as it grows, there's like this separation in the identity between like the people that are the the ideological people, like the pinnacles of performance, all those people they get put on this pedestal, and then we forget that they're a human. At least I do. And I want to hear like
Yeah,
who are they and what got them to that point, to that breaking point. So yeah, I appreciate that for
yeah.
you saying that, and we'll see. It means I have a high bar to continue to grow, and hopefully people keep saying yes. But yeah, man.
Yeah, I got a stupid question before we go.
Okay.
What that looks like a race hat that you have on. What race is that?
Oh, I
Is it
don't
a
even
race
know.
hat?
I think yeah, it is a race hat. Hold on, let me look. I think it's
Oh,
Blue
Virginia
Ridge.
Blue Ridge.
Yeah,
Nice one.
which it's sad because Blue Ridge they discontinued that race after the first year I did it, and it was like it's the best race I've ever performed at, the best performance of any race. I think I got 12th overall, and it was such a cool race because it has a huge climb, and you get to go on the Blue Ridge Parkway,
Yeah.
which I grew up in North Carolina, which is Blue Ridge Parkway Central, and oh yeah, it was just a cool race. So it's tough. Hopefully, it comes back in a few years after they finish doing the road work.
Yeah. What you got any workouts you're doing today after this?
Yep. After this, I am gonna go do 2 hours and 15 minutes on the bike, with some. I think it's like FTP and threshold stuff. It actually doesn't look too terrible. It's like 15 minute stuff, and
Okay.
then 50 minutes off the bike. Yeah.
Outside?
Outside. Oh yeah, it's like 70
Lucky.
degrees right now and sunshine.
Lucky
It's
dog.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Rub it in.
beautiful.
Rub it
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Yeah, I know you just came from Tucson, Arizona. You're like probably hating life right now, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. That's back to reality for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So,
Good deal, man. Well, I do actually have one last final question to leave the audience with, if that's okay. For you, what is a piece of advice that you would give to the younger ones who are coming behind us who maybe be struggling with addiction and want to find a way beyond that?
yeah, I mean, I would say don't be afraid to ask for help.
Hmm.
And, please, ask for help. And there is no shame in that you're not alone. And if you do come to the meetings or any kind of support group, like you will be welcome, wanted, and loved, and you'll feel at home because you'll be around
Hmm.
other people who are going through what you've gone through. And you know, you'll find a way to get out of this. But the first thing you got to do is make that decision to seek help. So
Hmm.
yeah, just don't be afraid and know that you're not alone.
Yeah. Good deal. Thank you so much for that advice. I'm sure
Yeah,
it
man.
will
Thanks for
be well
asking.
heard. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, and it's been an honor.
All right. Thanks, man. Likewise.
Thanks again so much to Joshua for coming on and sharing so deeply about his life and the things that he's gone through and the success that he has found in overcoming some very hard addictions. It was honestly an honor to have him on and to hear his story. So, again, thank you so much to him. If you made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much. No matter where you're listening or watching, if you wouldn't mind giving us a like, subscribe, comment, notification bell, comment, review, any of those things, it really does help us to grow. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can do that at the stupidquestions.show website. Thank you again so much for listening to all of these episodes and for coming along the journey. In the words of Joshua Monda, I just want to say that you are welcome, you are wanted, and you are loved. Thank you.